Hello. Welcome to our Lenten series on the last words of Jesus from the cross. This time it's, "Why have you forsaken me?" In Mark chapter 15, verses 33 through 37, it says, "At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. And at 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, 'Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani,' which means, my, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing near heard this, they said, "Listen, he's calling Elijah." Someone ran, filled a sponge with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down," he said. Then with a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. For a lot of my life, I've been told that God the Father turned away from God the Son in this moment because of the sin heaped on Jesus. However, it didn't make sense to me that God could turn away from himself. It didn't make sense to me that God, who sees all of time and infinite space all at once, and all of humanity's life and the sin of all ages, had to look away. It didn't make sense to me that God would not look upon the triumph that had been planned and worked toward for thousands of years. And yet, Jesus, God manifest in flesh, had said those words. I was puzzled. Then I found Psalm 22, and Jesus' words on the cross started to make sense to me. I'd like to offer an alternative view of these words of Jesus on the cross. Here are some key verses of Psalm 22 foretelling the events on the cross. Verses 1 and 2. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer, by night, but I find no rest." In verses 6 through 8. But I'm a man and not a worm, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. "He trusts in the Lord," they say. "Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him." And then verses 15 through 18. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You lay me in the dust of death. Dogs surround me. A pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment. Note the references to the crucified Christ and the events around him. These are indeed prophecies. They are also words of profound sorrow and pain, and left alone, give a sense of hopelessness. However, between those verses are others, full of hope and confidence that God is at hand and in control. Verses 3 through 5. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the one Israel praises. In you our ancestors put their trust. They trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried out and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. Verses 10 and 11. From birth I was cast on you. From my mother's womb you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. In verses 26 through 28. The poor will eat and be satisfied. Those who seek the Lord will praise him. May your hearts live forever. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations will bow down before him, for dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. On the cross, Jesus acknowledges the pain, suffering, and a feeling of abandonment. He also, though, remembers that he is not abandoned, not alone. God will win out. It will be well in the end. Jesus remembers that he is not forsaken, but cared for. I think Jesus is maybe calling to mind to himself and to those around that all of this was planned. All was in God's mighty hand, and all would be well, despite the ugliness. This makes me reflect on how badly some things have gone in my own life. The slow death of a grandparent and a young uncle when I was young myself. My parents' divorce and marriage when I was little more than a teenager. Some rocky times in my own marriage. The death of our second child just before he was 2 years old. The loss of my first job after college. In this particular circumstance about the job, we had been married just over 10 years, and were trying to adopt a child, but roadblocks kept popping up, and then I was laid off during a recession. The severance package was running out. I had about a week left with no job prospects at all. Then, out of the blue, my former boss called up with "We have a 6-week task that needs doing. Are you available?" Of course I said yes. When those 6 weeks were just about done, it was, "We have another 4-week task that needs doing." Again, yes. When those 4 weeks were just about done, it was, "We have a 3-week task that needs doing." Again, yes. Then the 3 weeks were done, and I had an offer from another company, which I accepted. The adoption process, which had been just stuck in the mire, was suddenly unblocked. I had found that God was with me step for step, even or especially when I couldn't see it. In all those calamities, my first thought was, "God, why have you forsaken me?" Looking back through, I can see God had not forsaken me. God was and always is caring for and helping me in good and bad times. Like in Psalm 22, things have been hard, but God was right there, helping me. As I've progressed from one calamity and blessing to the next, I've slowly learned to look for God's presence when in the hard places as well as when I'm in the easy places. So I'll wrap this up with 2 verses. Just before ascending into heaven, Jesus says in John 16:33, "I have told you these things, so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." And I think key for this presentation in Psalm 22, verse 24, "For he has not despised or disdained the suffering of the afflicted one. He has not hidden his face from him, but has listened to his cry for help." I hope this little meditation is a blessing and maybe a way to look at these verses a little differently. Thank you.